those that are bilingual, what have you heard from others that don't realize you can understand them? Please subscribe, leave a like, comment and share the video to help the channel. I'm French. I was in New York City, on top of the Empire State Building, and a young couple was standing next to me admiring the view. The guy turns to his GF and says in French, I need to shit so bad. I couldn't not laugh. Had a customer speaking Korean, and I heard them say the coffee was good, and I said thank you in Korean. They were super nice, and tipped more than I thought they should have. Hard to describe, but I thought it was adorable. I was at a weekend retreat for people studying sign language. It was held at a residential school for the deaf and the children were away at home, but a few teenagers were hanging around. A couple of the teen boys were trying to flirt with a girl. I wasn't paying close attention, and I'm not fluent anyway, but I could tell one boy was asking the other boy to talk to the girl for him, probably because he was too shy to talk to her himself. Finally I oversaw the boy ask her, what is your weight? The girl looked confused and a little disgusted. He repeated the question. The first boy slapped the second boy's hands away and emphatically signed, what is your name? The girl was happy enough to answer that, and I was glad none of them could hear me laugh out loud. My great-grandmother, great-grandma and grandma were in an elevator. Two women started speaking in Yiddish, though look at the poor washerwoman. As my great-grandmother got off, she turned and said, I can understand everything you said. Be nice. I'll just say as someone that knows sign language I can eavesdrop from across the room. The other thing is deaf people don't have the same social political correctness. If they want to say that they saw someone undo their pants, they will undo their pants to show what they want to convey even in public. So I see a guy telling some others in sign language about someone commenting on his button fly jeans. He is standing in the corner of a coffee shop. When he grabs his button fly and pulls it open, people around the room gasp in shock with WTF type comments. I was able to get the lead up to the fly show, and he was talking about how someone asked how he undid all those buttons so quick. Strangers in my city. They were German, and I'm half German half Italian. I live in Italy guys, and they asked me in English where they had to go to reach the city center. I told them where, in English again, and then put my headphones on. But I could hear them say, look, I told you, not every young person is bad. For example, this girl, she could have ignored us, but she helped us in German. They were an old couple. I love these two. Used to teach in Korea in a fairly small town. Some kids I taught told me about their grandma. She saw a black man at the train station and muttered at him in Korean to go wash his skin. She, of course, assumed there was no way he spoke Korean, but he immediately answered back in Korean, don't hate, grandmother. She was so shocked and embarrassed she just stood up and left the station. Took the afternoon train instead. I speak Mandarin. Heard some weird shit. I wouldn't marry you if you owned all the kittens in the world. Overheard in a restaurant was great. But I also speak some French, and while in Baltimore airport, I overheard a little girl who was pointing at a huge ass praying mantis on the window and say, it's not going to come on the airplane, is it? Adorable. I was working downtown in the US in a part of the city that is mainly tourists and waited on a Chinese family one day. The restaurant is the equivalent of a sit-down chain like Olive Garden. I greeted them in English and they responded in English, so I figured that this would be the best method of communication since they did not ask if I spoke Cantonese. Once I moved on to my next table, I heard the mother tell the father that it is such a shame that my parents worked so hard for me to not speak Cantonese and work at a restaurant. I went through the whole meal speaking in English, and at the end as I was handing them the bill, I said in Cantonese that it was a pleasure serving you, and I hope you come again soon. The mother's face dropped and she thanked me profusely and left a decent tip. I might speak English well, but I also know how to work the Chinese guild. So not me, but a friend of mine. So he is a manager in a kitchen, and when he got this sweet gig in a new kitchen it was like 90% Cuban women. Now my friend is straight up Irish, red hair, pale skin with freckles, green eyes, totally a white boy. His mother though was a Spanish teacher and raised him to speak fluent Castilian Spanish. Well, for his first 2 weeks the ladies talked a lot of smack about him in Spanish to each other and totally dissed him non-stop. He decided to let it roll, and when the 2 weeks was up he held a big meeting with them all to go over the changes he was gonna make. He held the whole meeting in Spanish, and he said every woman's face just dropped and went bright red. Lol, needless to say they stopped talking smack in Spanish. Employees at the Asian market don't think I know Mandarin. They talk some mad shit about everyone shopping there, and they some racists MFs. I hear watch the black ones, they steal quite often, and they comment on people's weight a lot. Sometimes my students forget I speak Russian and start saying stuff that is way inappropriate for English class. The best was when this one boy, who always finishes his work early and fidgets around with things, was pretending to swallow a pencil. Another boy, who thinks he's very funny, said in Russian, "I always knew you could deep throat." That kid turned a beautiful color when I reminded him I could understand. I started dating a girl and decided I'd learn her language, Punjabi, but I obviously didn't tell her because I wanted to keep it a surprise. Anyways, that's how I found out she was cheating on me, because I overheard her conversation with her friend. 8 months of effort gone in vain. In high school, I spent a month in Germany as an exchange student. The family had a son my age. Everyone I met commented on the fact that they had never met an American who could speak German. Until they met me. One night shortly after I arrived, I was at a party. 2 girls about my age sat down close to me and started talking. I tried to look oblivious. Girl 1, in German, "Isn't that the American boy staying with Peter?" Girl 2, German, "Yes. He's rather cute." Yes. Girl 1, German, "Yes. I'm going to say something." Girl 1, English, "Hey. Aren't you the American staying with Peter? I'm Birgit, and this is Hild." Me, in German, "Yes, I am. It's nice to meet you both." They both turned bright red. It was one of the funnest trips I've ever had. American who works abroad. It always baffles me how some American tourists seem to think that nobody else in the world speaks English. The one that comes to mind was at a train stop where some tourists who were clearly American were talking about how smelly everyone in the country was. Tourist A mentioned that tourist B should keep her voice down, and tourist B replied, "Why? None of them know what I'm saying." A guy standing behind them piped up with something like, "Pretty much all of us speak English." The tourists' faces dropped, and they were silent until the train came. It was excellent. This was in Argentina, for those asking. I took a youth group to Six Flags. We had extra tickets from a couple of no-shows, so I decided to scout them. A Korean family walked up, and I made my pitch. They conferred together in Korean. I'm a white guy, but I lived in rural Korea for a year and bargained with a lot of shopkeepers, so I knew their counteroffer and what they were willing to pay before they announced it in English. I was eating at a restaurant in Quebec, where seriously everyone speaks at least some English who isn't super old, and a couple who only spoke English sat there and bitched about everyone around them, as if no one could understand a word they were saying. It was crazy, because we were speaking English, albeit not so obnoxiously loud as to draw everyone's attention, as they were a couple of tables over. Anyways, it was embarrassing for them at first, then downright terrible as they even made fun of their waitress right in front of her. Eventually a manager came out and basically told them to fuck off. But as they went, people were commenting loudly in English, and I'm surprised people didn't actually clap. In high school I spoke Spanish fairly well. It was not common for that time, and for my area. A family was buying groceries, and as I was ringing up the items the father said he has not seen the stuff on the bottom. Don't get it. I rang up what was on the belt, and sat there. After a few moments I asked about the stuff on the bottom. They would not look at me for the next 2 minutes or so of the transaction. I used to be the manager at a hostel in Kingston, Jamaica about 3 years ago. I speak English, Spanish and understand German, Portuguese, Italian and French somewhat well enough to get the context. They would often talk negatively around the front desk before checking in about the locals, and would say extremely disgusting racist things, and would generalize about my fellow compatriots. I'm a local, but due to my Hispanic background I look Latino. Jamaicans are so lazy. These N-words are always trying to charge us more because we are tourists. This country is a complete shithole and backward. No one here is educated. Since I had the right to refuse admission, even if they had a booking, I would cancel their reservation and explain to them that it was due to the racist things they were saying. I was kind enough to issue a refund to these atrocious persons. The owner of the hostel would back me up and say people like that shouldn't stay here anyway. Please subscribe, leave a like, comment and share the video to help the channel.